Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Today, I am joined by the founder and creator behind Dear Joie and Sincerely Joie, Amanda Delos Reyes. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amanda.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for saying my last name right, first of all.
Thank you. I try my best. So, I just want to start off just by giving people a little bit of context. I think, the mission statement behind Dear Joie in specific is really unique and interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping maybe you could just begin by articulating it for us and providing a bit more context.
Yeah. Dear Joie, as you know, I've been making jewelry for some time, and the original name was Joie de Cristaux. So that was founded on a joy of crystals. And maybe we'll get into this at some point, but my business was founded on finding what gave me joy. And essentially, since day one, it was always, okay, how can I share that joy, that passion of mine through the products that I'm selling? That's what Dear Joie is all about, with the joy aspect. It's with everything. I have joy in making jewelry, wearing jewelry, the notebooks, the stationery, and then anything else that's going on between my company, I find joy in. And it's also not just the physical aspect, it's how it makes me feel, and wanting to share that. Whether it's from the design and the packaging, that brings me joy. And when I started my businesses, I didn't have that joy in my life. I was kind of just coasting. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was just going to the gym, and then I'd go home and twiddle my thumbs. I don't know. So finding that joy really just sparked something in me and wanting to share that too. I'm still trying to figure out too, okay, how do I share joy without just the products? How do I keep giving that as well? So that's what Dear Joie is. I mean, it's a jewelry and stationery business, but eventually, I want it to be more than just stationery and jewelry.
For sure, yeah. And on the product level, of course, it's that, but the mission behind it is really to spread joy and do the things that you love yourself, which I think is the inspiring portion of it. And I wanted to ask you, you said at one point you were that person who, didn't find joy in their work and stuff like that. Yeah. So, from your perspective, why do you think that people, postpone their joy or trade their joy or the things that they truly love for a paycheck? And what was it for you that kind of was that catalyst for you to actually take the leap and begin to do this?
Yeah. Just pondering, gathering my thoughts. For sure. But I think before I had my business or brand, whatever you want to call it, I didn't have anything for me, as I was saying. I didn't go to school, post-secondary. Of course, I went to high school, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to take that leap into the unknown until it was okay, I want to make sure I'm doing something fulfilling to me. And I think going back to your first question of, why do people trade joy with a paycheck? For me, for the longest time, it was more so being afraid to do it for me and not just okay, I'm going to go to school and become whatever, XYZ. It was truly a matter of okay, I'm not ready, but I know I will be. When's that going to be? I don't know does that answer it?
No, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it does. It comes down to that. It's there's something that I kind of go by. There's two basic motivators in life. One is fear and one is love, right? And it's hard to kind of balance those two things together. And just from me reading your mission statement, it's a part of my philosophy as well. When you do the things that you love and bring you joy, that's when you bring the maximum joy to others, and that's the most powerful thing that you can give to the world. And fear is a definite thing that kind of stops us in our tracks sometimes, but it's inspiring to speak to people like you who are actually pursuing this, and going deeper into just giving back to other people and being of service. That's you're very conscious of what you're doing with your businesses, whether it comes down to the materials that you're using or the organizations you're working with. I was hoping maybe you could just talk a little bit about that and maybe One Body Village as well, and kind of the work you're doing with them.
So with me, I have always, when I first started, it was always important to me to be supporting local businesses, you know, from getting the inventory or the materials to make a piece of jewelry. Right. It was always important to me to be like, okay, let's search for a company in Calgary. And if I can't find a company in Calgary who can provide the materials I need that's sustainable but also supports local businesses, then okay, let's go locally. That's always been important. And then with the notebooks, the materials used for that, it's making sure that the products I'm using, you know, it's environmentally friendly. I think that's also very important because we are in a time where we need to start being more, 100%. You know, more aware of how much garbage we're consuming, like just everything. Yeah. That was an important thing. And then with the whole giving back. So of course I'm giving back to the environment, making conscious decisions of, okay, I'm using metals that are recycled, right. Paper that's recycled. But then it takes another step into giving back to another community. I have always had children in mind whenever I thought of the give back programs that I've done. And the one that I'm doing or partnered with right now, and I foresee a longer relationship, is One Body Village. There's a Canadian chapter who I'm affiliated with, and they help with children who've been sexually, like in the sex trafficking world. I originally, when I first thought of giving back to children, it was going to be for children in the arts because you know, for me too, jewelry, when I wanted to take that next step and go become a metalsmith, I had to go to ACAD, and okay, ACAD, that's like a $500 course. Right. And then you have to think about all the materials. It's not cheap. For and, sure. You know, not even as like an Asian descent, but art. Like I think you've talked about this with Jenna. Like it's not something that, you know, it's not common. So that was kind of the foundation of being able to help children in the arts and, you know, explore that creativity. Especially to children's families who can't afford that. But then it took one step further, and I found One Body Village, and it really put me into, it allowed me to sit and reflect. Like with my parents coming to Canada, you know, I'm so privileged. We're privileged to 100%. Be growing up here. But then thinking like, okay, if they didn't, like, they're so vulnerable down there because if, you know, your family needed money. That's what a lot of these families are going through. They essentially need the money. Right. So they'll put their daughters and, you know, they'll sell them off for sex. Right. The part of, sorry, I'm like shivering because it's so cold. I know it's really cold. It's minus 40 out there for anybody listening. It's freezing. It's freezing. Sorry for my voice shaking. It's cold. But the project that I'm working on, it does help. Of course, it helps the girls in, you know, sexual trafficking, but it also helps them with the educational portion too of like the arts, even with, you know, technology, allowing them to go back into school. Okay. That's kind of the project that I'm working on right now with Dear Joie and One Body Village. That's a big portion. Sorry, I kind of blabbered, but there's just so much, and for me, it's important to help the children. They're, you know, they are our future. 100%. And you know, those girls in third world countries, they don't have that help or that outreach. And I think One Body Village, it's beautiful what they're doing and allowing those girls another chance at life, for sure. For sure, I feel like that's such a powerful cause to be supporting and to be a part of. You know, just you touched on it already. Like, you know, for us, it's about following our dreams, finding what fulfills us, finding what brings us joy. But before we can do that, our basic needs have to be met. Like, and the people out there just and being able to empower them through something that you love is so incredibly powerful to me, right? And that's another reason why I wanted to have you here with us today, Amanda, because, you know, there's so many inspirational portions of your journey and your story. First being the way that you give back, but also for me personally, you know, I'm inspired by, you know, the circumstances that actually led you to start your business. You know, just to do with your health and things like that. And I was hoping that you could kind of share your story with us to kind of help people who might
be dealing with something similar or be battling fear in their lives or anything like that.
I actually didn't really fully share this story till this year. And I think you might have been on that live where I kind of touched up on it.
Yeah, it was.
Now that I'm thinking of it. But I mean, I've had a business because, you know, I consider Dear Joie a second business because it's kind of a branch. But when I first started my first business, going back to, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just working. I just started my career or whatever in the oil and gas industry. And when I started, it was about 2014. I had already been going with an issue. It's common between girls. It's definitely taboo. So talking on that subject, it's cervical cancer. And I don't know if this is like TMI or whatever, but you know, girls have to do a yearly check. And I had found out that I had abnormal cancer cells in 2009. So I was only 18 and I was like, what is this? I was freaking out. Doctor said, you know, it's nothing to be worried about. Like, it is common to get an abnormal test back. So I was like, okay, well, just deal with it. And that was always like something haunting me growing up. Well, yeah, growing up, because essentially
for sure
I was still a teenager.
At that point,
and that was always on my mind. And when I started actually working and, you know, doing a little bit better for myself, I didn't have anything. And then I had found crystals, which you know of. And that was a blessing in disguise. That's kind of how my business started was through crystals, but also because when I had found that the abnormal cancer cells was getting more serious, that kind of helped me become a bit more of like a positive person. I was very pessimistic. I was very like, oh my gosh, like what's wrong with me? I didn't think I was going to die, but it was also like, it was hard, right? Sure. Not knowing anyone else going through that. And I did tell some friends at the time, they aren't friends anymore, but they were just like, I don't believe you. Like they kind of brushed it off. So I think that's why it took me so long not to really share it with anyone. And especially on a business standpoint, because it's just, you know, it's taboo. It's like, okay, well, it's dealing with your cervix. So, you know, those are your private parts. It's like, okay, well, yeah, it is. But like, this is serious. I mean, a lot of people go through it. And that was kind of the stem of how my businesses came. I found that joy through, you know, that happiness, that positivity. And you probably recognize it. It's a French saying. It's joie de vivre, so expression of joy. And through jewelry, that's what gave me joy. And that's kind of the aspect of everything that goes on with me. It's like, okay, it gives me joy. How can I give it back? Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess when you receive news like that, that becomes more of a, you know, an immediate concern of like being happy.
Yeah.
You know, like really enjoying your life and making it worthwhile. And one thing that you said there that was really interesting to me was, you know, you used to be a pessimistic person until you that happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Something that I've been really intrigued with lately is changing the stories we tell ourselves. You know, changing the stories that we tell about our own lives, about our own history, about our own past, and you know, can you talk about how you were able to kind of spin or change your story to be something positive, something that brings people joy rather than like turning yourself into a victim and yeah, how was that process for you?
That turning point, I mean, I think it was just a matter of changing your outlook. As a pessimist, you know, you think everything's going wrong. And if you think that, it's going to happen. It you know, it comes back to you. But I think through finding, you know, a hobby that had given me, it sparked that joy and sparked some passion in me. That's really what helped me, you know, turn my act around. I was going to the gym a lot, but I took it one step further and was like, okay, like maybe the crystals are showing me something. And that helped me find that spirituality in me too, where it was like, okay, I need to be nourishing myself, not just like, okay, this is my vessel. I need to look a certain way. I mean, yeah, it's great if you look great,
Right.
It's great, but do you feel good too? Right?
100%.
And I think that was the turning point, is just not letting these abnormal cancer cells define me.
Yes.
And also, you know, I could have it worse. Like, I still have my health. So let's enjoy it rather than just sulking.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that really helped, like, as much as like it was a negative aspect, and it could have been way worse. I think kind of backtracking, going back to why I never really shared it either. It's not as serious. Like, it wasn't full on cancer, but that last step before I had a procedure done, it could have progressed into actual 100%. Cancer. So I think that's why too. It was like, okay, yeah, I need to be positive, because it's not the end of the world. I have people who love me now, and, you know, comfortable with myself, that I could change that thought process.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that a lot. You know, this is something that I like to tell myself a lot, or other people too. It's just, you know, you can either be miserable or you can be happy. The amount of effort required is the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because it takes so much energy to be in a negative space or be pessimistic about life, and it takes just as much energy to be happy, to see the bright side of things. And for me, it's just easier on my soul to also do that. You know what I mean? Try to redefine my story to be something positive, and you know, without any obstacles in life, you don't have the opportunity to be the hero of your own story. You know what I mean? Which is like really what I see you as, is the hero of your own story. You know, taking something like that and being able to do what you're doing now. You know, spreading joy and also creating joy within yourself, which is really awesome. So for like you mentioned it, I first discovered what you were doing through crystals, because I also think crystals are super cool. I've been fascinated with the idea of, you know, how our early development as children manifest in our development as adults. So, you know, I was hoping that you could maybe tell us a little bit more, like, what was your first run-in with crystals? How did you kind of start to fall in love with them? Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, oh my gosh, it stems back to, I think it was like grade 2 or grade 3. And maybe this was something that was common in like people in Calgary with the school system, but I remember taking home a kit, and you could grow your own crystals. I don't know if you remember, but
I didn't have that.
I don't know what it was, but there's some, I don't think it was a chemical, but it was just, you know, the scientifics of like growing. I don't even know, but it
would start to crystallize on something like in the water, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it just stems back to even, you know, going to the malls. I remember remember there being kiosks, and they would have different crystals, and that was the first time I ever laid on like polished little stones, and I remember begging my mom, like, can I get some? And it was like in a little baggie, and probably had like 5 of them. It was around when I was a child, and I still have my first little like amethyst rock that we got from the duty free driving to Montana. So I mean, it's always been there. I've always had a fascination with them. But like I said, it wasn't till I was going through that time where crystals were reintroduced as like, okay, like the spirituality of it. I don't share it as much as I used to, because that was kind of the whole thing of it. But then I just, as you grow too, just things change. Just I think the metaphysical properties of crystals, like it's hopeful for people, right? And I think that's what it was for me in that sense, where it was like, okay, I'm going through this tough time. This crystal, like, you know, does this and this and this, and you know, you take it with a grain of salt. It's not hurting anyone at all. And I think that was the aspect that I really like to share, because everyone's going through something, and if they can be hopeful and, you know, relate to what this stone means, by all means, like, have at it, right?
100%.
I think with the crystals that's been around, that's kind of how that's happened. But even with the jewelry and notebooks, like I loved stationery growing up. I'm sure a lot of others too, but I just remember always buying notebooks and always going to like the Sanrio store and purchasing notebooks as a young child and collecting them, and they would just sit there. I was too scared to write in them or anything. That's always been a big part of like what I loved. Even jewelry. I remember always stealing my mom's jewelry and, you know, wearing them for myself. I even worked for a jewelry company in high school.
Okay, awesome.
It was like a kiosk,
Right,
and it stems back. And I think I think hopefully we're on the right track here, but you know, with those childhood things, like it manifests into something bigger when you're older. I think there's always something you can look back on, because it's, if you have an interest of something, if you really deep down like look into it, you'll know that it's something, it stems from childhood experience most likely, of like, okay, this was in my life, it brought me joy, but maybe I forgot.
For sure. Yeah, that really just brings me back to a conversation I had with Claude about finding your genius, right? And you know, part of that's just like what you enjoy the most, and it goes back to your mission statement as well, right? Like spreading joy by doing the things that give you joy yourself. And really, I think that we're all here for each other. You know, we're all here to give our gifts to each other, and what better way to do that than exploring the things you love? And I think I would encourage anyone who wants to do that to explore your inner child and like what really gets your inner child excited. Because I do think that we know what we're meant to do early on, but I also think that's why a lot of people, myself included, you know, give up so early on as well. You know, because you know, at a certain age, you're just told to dream so much, and then once you turn a certain age, you're like, oh, it's time to get practical here. Like, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
So just I guess on that same vein of like, of that, you know, I've been kind of trying to balance out these two different ideas in my life lately. One of them is, you know, just take the first step, and the next step will reveal itself. And then the other adage or idea is begin with the end in mind. You know, and trying to balance those two things. From those two statements, you know, which do you feel better describes your journey, the way that you started, and also like moving forward? Like maybe you can just
those are really great. And I think it's just to begin. Like, as scary and daunting as that is, if you just start something, you never know how it'll go. That's why you take chances. And I think that's why there's that fear too, because no one wants to start something they don't know. With even my businesses evolving with me, I have that other portion of Sincerely Joie, my marketing thing. It was just a matter of being curious enough to want to take the next step. I think what's special about my businesses, or what has taught me about my businesses, is that I've been able to grow with it, and just taking those chances and just starting. If I fail, then at least I know. If I never started, how would you know, right? How do you learn from what you've started, or how do you learn from those mistakes? But I think just starting. For sure.
That's definitely my experience as well. Like, I've learned the most just by doing, you know, in the action of things, in the process of quote unquote failing. You learn a lot. So I think it's important just to begin, and curiosity is definitely the catalyst for that. You mentioned it briefly, like Sincerely Joie, you're also working on that. You've also mentioned to me, you know, you handle all the operations of all of your ventures by yourself, right? So maybe some practical advice, or something practical, like, you know, how do you even balance all of those things? Like, because there's marketing, there's the creation of your product, there's the distribution of your product. Like, how do you balance your life out with all that?
Sometimes I still don't know. I just kind of, you make time for things you love. And, you know, with loving being an entrepreneur, that's so many other hats. But I think with balance I think it's important to set those boundaries. When I first kind of ventured out on my own, I didn't have those boundaries, and that really, that caused me to burn out within like 9 months. And I knew I was burnt out. I was in denial, but I ended up calling 911 because I might, like, my heart rate was at like 130, and I was just sitting there. So I was like, okay, something's wrong with me. And then, you know, one of my clients was like, well, are you stressed? No, I don't feel stressed. But I didn't know my boundaries. And I think if you take into consideration that you're going to be an entrepreneur and you're going to handle everything right now, it really comes down to a task list. Like that's a practical piece of advice I could give someone is just have your boundaries and create a task list every morning. Sorry, does that answer?
No, 100%. And that's like, it's a similar question I've asked other people who've come to speak with me here. And, you know, I think it's really awesome how similar the advice is, because it really means like, you know, these are the tried and true tools that people have actually used that help them. Like simple things like having a task list, having deadlines, but also having boundaries. Like, you know, I don't answer my phone for everybody. And you know, taking care of yourself, like you mentioned it earlier, like, you know, how do I feed myself? How can I make sure that I'm happy as well and giving myself joy in the midst of actually doing the work as well, right? Since I had that conversation with Claude, I've been really thinking about, you know, finding your own genius and working on the things that you're truly good at and that you love. So in handling all these tasks, do you feel like that all of them are your genius? Like all of them are like parts innately that you've developed naturally, or is it hard for you? Like, are there some things that you're really stepping out of your comfort zone to do, or what's that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm stepping out of my comfort zone every day. Eventually I would love to, like, one of my goals is to be able to hire someone, whether that's to create content for my clients or, you know, help me package or create, but it's also a sense of like relinquishing that control, because I do everything. So I have my particular ways that I want to do things. I really love like the design aspect. Marketing, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I'm very introverted and like to myself. So it's hard to be online and vulnerable in that sense. I'm getting better at it, but that's really hard too. But I do find joy in that, because, you know, you're taking that step into fear and constantly sharing. You don't want to be a gatekeeper all the time. You want to be able to share your knowledge, because knowledge is power, right? 100%. The operations side of it, I would love to, like, that's something that I don't really love, like having to be like, okay, how do I ship this box to China, or, you know, somewhere, you know, totally. Like Canada's fine, but when you're dealing with overseas, there's so many things that you need to figure out. For sure. I don't have that knowledge. So, you know, like procurement, I guess you could say, it's like, how do you get this from here to there or there to here? Yeah,
obviously at the like most cost effective way, because there's like tons of different ways you can do it. And I'm sure like, it's a learning process. One thing that I really liked about what you said was, you know, I think this is something that everybody finds hard to a certain extent. Like there's a spectrum of difficulty of sharing yourself, especially online or to other people. Like even this process for me right now is hard. But for me, I just wanted to like add my little thought on that, which is, you know, to really be able to give your greatest gift, it has to be received. And to be received and to be seen, you have to put yourself out there. There's no other way. You know, you can put out a projection or something that you want people to see, and even if people love that version, you're never going to really receive that, because it's not truly who you are. So like being able to be vulnerable in these spaces for me has been therapeutic, and also being with people who are willing to be vulnerable about their stories to help other people has also been super therapeutic for me. So I think that's powerful, and I want to encourage people who do feel uncomfortable sharing themselves, especially, you know, online or in any circumstance, to do that, because it's so important just to connect.
It is important to connect, and I think with social media, I mean, our generation's lucky because we experienced, you know, going outside, not having a phone, and then to being online constantly. I know the word vulnerable and being authentic is heavily used, and not a lot of people use it, but when you're giving from that state of vulnerability, people can see it. You know, it's not, you can tell if someone's being authentic or truly vulnerable with you, excuse me. Being online, it's a hard thing to juggle. And I think if you're just doing you, and, you know, you're not doing any harm, or you're not being a bully online, or, you know, whatever. That's way you can navigate it. But yeah.
And just speaking on that, like, you know, that vulnerability and people being able to recognize that, you know, another kind of adage in my life is, you know, we're all just each other living a different life. And so when you see somebody else being themselves, you can see yourself in them.
Yeah.
Which creates that connection, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to my next question, which, like, you know, obviously you're a one-woman show, but I'm sure because of that, you have to have a very strong support system outside of your business, right? Because you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess you mentioned it already. You know, there's people that you told about, you know, your health issues and they didn't believe you, and, you know, they're not really your friends anymore.
Yeah.
In the process of cultivating your circle or your tribe in life, you know, I feel like, you know, sometimes you got to let some friendships go and some people go, and maybe you could just speak on that about your process and how that was for you, because I think it's hard for a lot of people, even for myself, like, you know, growing in this way that I am. There's a lot of people who don't resonate with that energy, and I'm trying to really cultivate that tribe around me. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard, especially if, you know, the people you thought had your back truly didn't. I think for me, it was not that I was lucky, but I still didn't know myself at the time when I had to cut those ties, where I think that's what made it easy. But even, I mean, I had to break up with a best friend. I mean, even when I first started my jewelry, and that was tough because I knew I wasn't being the friend she needed, and it wasn't fulfilling me in a sense. You know, she wasn't checking in with me. It was like, you know, you get what you give, right? But I think with that process is just, people are in your life. They're meant to be in your life, whether it's for a day or 12 years, right? And you just have to recognize that they had a reason for being in your life. What can you learn from that? Why didn't it work? And can you grow from it? You have to grow from it. You can't
100%.
solve, right? Yeah, I think that process of letting people go was definitely hard, but in the end, you do only have yourself. I have that tattooed. It's a quote my mom always says, in the end, all you have is yourself. But I cut that when I was young and naive. Like, I'm the only child, so I think that's where she was saying, like, have your own back. But when you have a group of people who actually, you know, seeing what you go through and can sympathize, then those are the people you need. And if, you know, if there's even a red flag of someone that's just not fulfilling you or like that relationship, you'll know. And either you act on it right away, or it's going to be a lesson that you need to learn from.
For sure.
5-10 years later.
Yeah, and I think it does come back to those two motivations, right? The motivation of fear and love. It's like, one is the motivation of love for yourself and doing anything for yourself, to be a guardian for yourself, to protect yourself from different people or energies, or succumbing to that motivation of fear, which might be like, oh, well, I might be alone. I might not have the support system I need, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So I think that's powerful. And another thing you said in there that I think is really powerful was, you know, all you have is yourself. And I do think that tribe and your circle or your support system, it starts from yourself. You know, you have to be able to carry your own weight. You have to be able to love yourself, to be able to really give to a circle as well. Because like you said, you get what you give. So if you don't have much to offer into a space or a tribe, then it's hard to really cultivate those people around you. And I think that's really important to have a support system. So I think that's some really great insight that you gave us there. Yeah,
I think having that support is so important. I mean, my boyfriend of 12, 13... 2009, so whatever. It's been a long time. He's, you know, with my business, like, he's grown with me. He's seen my businesses grow. And I've had some really dumb ideas, but I think I'm grateful for him because he's allowed me to explore those dumb ideas rather than being like, that's dumb, don't do it. You know, you have to learn for yourself. And if you have a support system that's, you know, willing to, you know, be real with you, but allow you to grow and learn from that, that's so important too.
100%. Yeah. 100%. There's definitely been times in my life where I'm like, I can do this. I don't need anybody. I can do this by myself. But, you know, the truth always comes back, and we definitely, the truth that I've learned through my experiences is we need each other. Humans really need each other. There's nothing that we can do that's great by ourselves. So
for sure. I think, I am doing all this stuff alone. I'm a one-woman show. But I think if you're thinking like support system, like I have that support, so I don't feel alone if I'm like, oh, hey, like, can you help me? Does this sound like a good idea? Does this caption sound good? Or, it's just having someone there behind you. And I know that can be hard because some people, maybe they do truly feel alone. Maybe they don't have a support system like I do. But I think that's one thing that's beautiful about social media is that I've built so many amazing connections for sure just through social media. Like I'm pretty sure that's how we probably met. Through social
or at least connected on a deeper level.
Yeah. So I think it's a powerful tool, but you have to be careful with it. But I think you're never alone. Someone's always willing to listen.
And if you do find yourself alone, I think the best thing to do is to cultivate that relationship with yourself. Be kind to yourself, love yourself, reaffirm yourself. Like if you're in a situation where you have an idea and every single person around you is telling you it's stupid, be the one person that believes in you. Be the one person that says like, you can do this. Like, you know what, worst case scenario is you fail and you learn something. Right. So I think that's awesome. But I just want to kind of like shift over to, more practical stuff, I guess, which is, a lot of people kind of start their side hustles, their passion. But obviously you're doing this full time now. This is your work. So, how did you know it was time to take your passion or your side hustle full time? And what was that process like for you?
So I have the pandemic to help for that.
Okay. Right.
So, I mean, I was working oil and gas for quite a long time. I think it was 7 or 8 years. And then my last position was in marketing and executive assistant, but it wasn't fulfilling. So then I tossed the idea of maybe doing my own thing. But I didn't have that experience. So I started working for another local company, a small business here too. And I was with them for 5 months, but in that 5 months, I got the toolkit to really learn how to manage multiple businesses. That's not just my own. But when the pandemic happened, I think I was going through a quick burnout through them too, definitely. And when the government was like, oh yeah, people can start going back to work, I was really like, oh, do I want to? Right. I mean, I cracked. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have some time off. This is great. But within 1 week, I was already like, I think I took on a virtual assistant role with some girl in Calgary. And I was like, okay, I need to be doing something. Yeah. But then when they're like, yeah, you want to come back? And I was just like, I don't know. Like, this is the perfect time to really explore if I can do this on my own. Right. I didn't know at the time that I was going to do marketing full time on top of Dear Joie. But I think I knew I was ready, not just because of the circumstances, but it was always something in my head that was like, okay, eventually I want to do this full time and see where it goes. And that was just a sign for me that I needed to take, because there wouldn't be any other opportunity. If I went back into corporate work, right, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably still be doing Dear Joie like as a small side hustle. Right. And now it's like, it's working for myself has really helped me visualize and plan out goals of where I want each business to be. I still don't know if I want Dear Joie to be like the it thing. That's something that I've always wanted, but because Dear Joie was founded on being like that joy aspect, I don't want to be a sellout and be like, oh yeah, okay, here, buy my business. Like that's something I want. I think I'd want to have, I don't know, indefinitely, but if I could grow something from that and if I have kids and that can be like a legacy, that's awesome. But then with the marketing, it's great because I get to work with small businesses like myself, and that's very fulfilling. So I'm still kind of torn where it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Is it going to be the marketing? Can I be both? I mean, probably. I might drive myself nuts, but eventually at that point, hopefully I have some more help on like letting go of tasks so I can focus on what I love most, for sure.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the idea of doing what you love, and also I don't think that you have to define yourself in any way. Right?
No,
like, you're just doing the things that bring you joy, and that's so many different things.
Yeah.
Like, for myself, I struggle with this as well. Like, what kind of content do I put out? Because I feel like I'm such an eclectic person.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy having conversations like these. I love learning. I love reading. I love exploring different ideas. I love music. I love martial arts.
Yeah.
Like, how does that even fit together?
How do you fit everything?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so, like, I think you just kind of explore, and it's kind of like what you said before, which is just allow your curiosity, just start things. Just do things, and eventually the truth will reveal itself. And
I mean, you can have a plate, like, to give maybe a more solid answer, like, if you want to become an entrepreneur and do something full time, you can have a plan in place. There's nothing wrong with that. I think when I was working full time, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll have like 20 grand saved up to, to support myself if I want to just do Dear Joie. Right. That never happened. It was just, things always work. I don't think there is failure, but things always work out in the end for you.
I actually
you go left or right, but there's always going to be something that helps but helps answer your calling or whatever. But
no, I believe that wholeheartedly, that at least every single time in my life when I've looked back at something that was hard for me, with time and perspective, I was like, wow, that worked out perfectly. And that goes back just like full circle to what you were saying before, and how you redefined your story. Even such bad news can be a catalyst for motivation, for growth, for expansion. So no matter what, it's positive.
I think it's just a matter of where your mental space is at when, like a bad thing happens. And maybe one thing I should have said earlier, but gratitude, I know that's so cliche and so silly, but gratitude really helps you also overcome anything that's going on in your life, for 100%. Sure. You could be, things could be awful for you, but okay, well, what is this teaching you, and how can you be grateful about it? How do you show gratitude? I think that helps a lot.
For sure. That reminds me of a saying. It's like, I used to want to change the world, but now I realize all I have to do is change the way I see it. Your life is really hard to feel down on yourself and feel like a victim when you're counting your blessings, and like you were talking about earlier, at the very baseline, are there people in your life that love you? Is there someone you can talk to? Is there someone you can give a hug to? Is there someone willing to listen to what you're going through, or anything like that? I think that's important to keep in mind. Gratitude has been a huge tool in my life, for sure, especially in the hardest moments. And just to kind of like bring us back to, you said, like, maybe you can do both, but that's going to be, how long can you sustain that with the workload, right? I think I saw you post something on social media about how this is actually the first time you had a real extended break for like however many years that is. Do you feel like working those types of hours is just a part of being an entrepreneur, and it's a necessary mindset to have, or has your mindset shifted now that you've had like a little bit of time off? Like, what is that for you?
I used to always think that you needed to hustle, like hustle culture. That's something everyone is kind of in. And I used to be that person that was like, oh yeah, like I worked 16 hours and slept only 4, and here I am again. Like, no, that's not, you shouldn't be putting that on a pedestal. Like, you really need to be having your boundaries. Okay, if you're gonna work a 16-hour day, what are you doing the next day to like nourish yourself again? My first break without any computers, even corporate, I would do payroll while I was in Japan. Like, I was always on. I never had a chance to step back. And I mean, it's only been the 24th. Well, it's technically today it started, but on Christmas Eve, I gave my laptop back to Apple because I needed it for repairs. I was like, oh God, do I just buy a laptop just in case? But then I was like, you know what? I have an iPad. If someone needs something, that's there. But it's been hard. I've been like kind of stir crazy. Like I've been binging TV shows, but it's gonna come to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm consuming way too much crap. Like how do I fulfill my business in some sense? It's hard. It's hard to step back, and I think having those boundaries for sure just helps.
I think it does. It comes back to like, giving back to yourself. How are you filling your cup back up again after giving so much to your business or to your customers or to the people that you're serving, right? And if that is watching Netflix and stuff, that's awesome. For me personally, it's like, that's why I have so many hobbies, because those things fill my cup, even though it might seem like it's work to some people. It's like literally that's what I do to replenish my own energy and myself. So I think that's an important distinguishment to make. Like, so I've shared a lot of my own, philosophies or quotes or whatever you want to call them that kind of help me through life. Do you have anything like that? Do you have any like things that kind of like really ground you? Any pillars that kind of help you in hard times that you just remember and kind of set you back on track? Or?
Honestly, I think it's just the gratitude. Like I've always have fallen back on gratitude. My memory, can I swear?
Of course.
My memory's shit. So like quotes or authors' books, like I am the worst. I'm trying to be better at like, okay, let's read 10 pages a day so I can build that memory. But I think the pillar is really just having that gratitude, and wanting to inspire others too. Like, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not really inspiring, but what I'm doing, like I'm sure tons of people 100%. Find inspiring. Like it's that imposter syndrome where it's just like, no, I'm just doing my thing, but it's more than that. Like I'm giving, but also there's a purpose for what I'm doing, whether it's giving back to the community or helping others find that light. I'm always open to people. Like I always say, if you need anything, reach out to me. Like not, you can have someone that you've known for 10 years and they never reach out and be like, how are you actually doing?
Exactly.
But I think just having that gratitude and being able to take those experiences and share and somehow inspire, for sure.
I think that's powerful. I think that's really powerful. For me, motivation, if it's just myself that's motivating me, I'm not very motivated. You know what I mean? Like if it's just like, because me personally, I don't need a lot of stuff. If I was just here in my life right now and everything was just the same for me personally from here on out, I think I'd be happy and content with that. My motivation has always, my deepest and strongest motivations have always come from like helping other people, whether that's my family or my tribe of close people or friends, or the customer that I feel like needs this thing, or like the listener that needs to hear this stuff. Like that's the biggest motivation for me, and that's what that like I think that's really powerful what you shared. That's gonna keep you going more than just your own personal desires, right?
I think that community aspect too, like when you're on Instagram or social media, you have an audience, but essentially that's your community. Like I think before I am very kept to myself sometimes, but it's being able to talk even like this, just share experiences with others. It's very thriving, and it's also inspiring. It's just talking to some, I mean, you don't have to be just a creative, just someone you could bounce ideas with different things. Like that's truly powerful, and I think that it's important to have that. I mean, in my office, it's just me. Like I'm the only one that's in there, but day to day I meet with clients, and with my clients, like it's more than just that transactional relationship. Like their brand, their business is my business too. So how do we grow together? How can I help you? And go from there. And that kind of like went on to another tangent, but like I think having the community, the gratitude for what you have, for sure.
I love that. I love that. And on that note, how can people find you, Amanda? How can people join you in your community? How can people be a part of what you're doing, and where can people find you on the internet or anywhere?
So Dear Joie, DearJoie, in case people are like, how do you say Joie.
Yeah.
Joey? Joy? It's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's French. I don't speak French. Sorry. But
I looked it up on Google and I did the little audio thing to make sure I was prepared.
Good. Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram. I'm delving into TikTok. I find TikTok so much fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I used to hate it because it was always just like the dances.
Right. It's evolving. It's cool.
It's evolving, and it's I don't know, it just takes me back to it takes me back to old social media days where it wasn't so curated.
100%.
Yeah, it's more a bit raw, and I can lay there and just have a laugh for a couple hours.
For sure,
like,
oh,
this
really
is great.
Stuff. I enjoy it too.
But yeah, I'm on Instagram, dearjoie.com, sincerely joie, but I am most active on Instagram. I've been taking a break because social media can be so exhausting.
For sure.
Yeah.
But also you have a location, right, where people can find your stuff in real life?
Yes.
Like, where is that located?
So it's located, it's from, I don't know if you've heard of the Burns building, but it's a beautiful historic building just right on Olympic Plaza. Is it Olympic Plaza or Olympic Park? Whatever the one in downtown is, across from City Hall. I can never know because there's the other one, the other Olympic thing in the university. But yeah, it's just a showroom space. So I technically, you have to have like an appointment book to come in, but I'm usually there Monday to Thursday. And yeah, that's where people can take a look at the jewelry and the stationery. I think with the stationery, that's one thing that I really needed was like, the paper is just so soft. I don't know if like you're like tactical like that, where like a sense of touch, but yeah, I'm always like, yeah, come touch the paper. That sounds so
love that.
funny.
I love that. But it's important. Like, and that's great that you have that space where people can really like, get personal with your products, because that's what it is. Your products are very personal.
Yeah, so. And I mean, I was just working from home the last 2 years now, I guess you could say. But it was starting to get unmotivating. Like, I don't know if that happens with you, because if you work from home or things like that. But I was just needing something to step out of. Like, I wasn't able to have that, like, okay, I'm going home now. But it was just like, okay, I'm going to shut off my laptop. And then if something comes up, then I'll just go back to work. But
no, I think that's super important. Like, just what you're saying about boundaries, to have a separate place for work and living. Yeah. I think that's important. And there's an awesome opportunity to go touch some paper and look at a cool historical building. So I think that's dope.
touch my paper.
Touch the paper. Awesome, Amanda. Thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it.